is Escher Barrett, and this is Physics 2211, Lab 4, Oscillations. So the purpose of this lab was to analyze the motion of a spring mass system to better understand the energy principle. The principles we used was the Newton's second law, of course, which compares momentum with net force, and we used this to find the force of the spring in this system. We also needed the energy principle, which describes how the energy of a system is affected by external forces and external energies, like work for the surroundings and thermal exchange. In this specific scenario, the change in the energy of the system is zero because we assume that there is no external force from the surrounding. So the result we found was that the change in the system energy stays at zero as the energy principle predicts. For this experiment, we used the tracker program to determine the location of the center of mass of this system. This is the video right here, and the red dots are each position mapped on each frame. So the initial conditions are mass. Here you can see our mass here. We can see initial position and velocity. It started at rest, and we figured out the oscillation period by taking 5 different by looking at the graph for the y position with respect to time, and determining 5 different oscillation periods and taking the average of those 5. And then from there we can find the spring stiffness, and from that we can find the relaxed length of the spring. Next, we created a computational model, and here's the code. This is based, the values here for the mass, the initial positions, and the spring constant and relaxed length of the spring are all things that I found in the slide before, and so they're all based on experimental data. In the box on the bottom, we initialize the energies in the system and the lengths of the string and the string position, ball position. Continuing the code, we created a loop that would continuously update the different energies that we had in the system. So we began by defining the initial energies, then the gravitational force, spring force, and then the net force, and then applied Newton's second law to update the ball's position and velocity. And then we updated the spring's position, and finally, we kept updating the energies of the system. Now this would work iteratively to eventually pump out these results. So this compares the x position versus time and y position versus time of the model that we created, the computational model in blue, and the experiment, the observations that we had in the tracker program. You see that they're very similar, but there is definitely some error. This would be due to possibly incorrect locations of the center of mass as human error, as I picked all those positions, or the fact that the system is not completely isolated as assumed. There are still external forces acting on the system in reality. Was the energy principle satisfied? Yes, the energy principle states that the change in an energy of a system should be zero when there's no external forces acting upon it. As we see in the results on the right, specifically the orange line, the change in total energy remains zero despite energy flowing through different types. So despite going from kinetic to potential, the change in energy of the system remains zero, which we expect based on the energy principle. And finally, the different oscillation periods. If we had different oscillation periods, how would that affect our results? In this experiment, I chose the y direction to find to use as an oscillation period. But if we had chosen the x direction, we would have had a slightly higher value for our oscillation period, which would have resulted in a slightly lower spring constant, and therefore continued to have affected our calculations later down the line. Thank you.